least discussed or talked about during the process. How did he handle interviews? How did he handle interactions with players and coaches? That's where I felt it. In terms of the broadcast, I was happy to be there. There was the urgency to be very well prepped for it, and to bring like a local flavor. Like you got to talk as if you're not a national person, helicoptering in to do a game and telling people, oh, did you know Ignas Brzdeikis is good? And fans know that he was a Big Ten full flavor, but I felt pretty a little bit more nervous and amped up about.
And when you turn on basketball now on the radio, what do you want to hear? What makes a great broadcast for basketball on the radio in your eyes?
I mean, first off, it's the critique I always give. They send me tape, time and score. It just doesn't happen enough. And now I guess if you listen on satellite radio, you can hit the button and you can see it. But I think that's the minority. People want to know what's going on. Secondly, you want the passion to come out. And that was, for me, one of the tougher things to manufacture last season without crowd noise and energy. I remember listening to my first game. We opened against Bowling Green at home. It was a pretty routine bye game, got the win. Nothing, just a your run-of-the-mill November home college basketball game against a mid-major team. And I remember listening to it. I'm like, you don't realize just how much you feed off a crowd and that energy. For me, I want to hear that. It's different in basketball. I want calm. Basketball, man, the atmosphere is so important. The energy is so important. I want to hear that. And if that comes across, I'm going to be a lot more tuned into what's happening, as opposed to, if it's just mundane and routine and stuff like that. And, to me, it's not going to take a whole lot for me to, but if you really want to draw me in, make me care about it. Make me want to be locked in on this as much as I can.
And then for basketball as well, how do you get ready? How do you organize your charts? So what's important with you to have going into every basketball game you call?
Yeah, so for me, that's why I think there's such a huge advantage in, being the play-by-play broadcaster for a team, because I could call, once a few games get, in the books, I could call a Michigan game and not really prep for Michigan. Obviously I still do, but you're so acclimated into it, you could do it. For the visiting team, what I normally do is, it's not super scientific, but I don't really touch my charts outside of updating stats until about 24 hours before. I just open a new Word document and I will put down, okay, who are the 10 players on, say, Iowa that I know are going to play or are likely to play. And then I'll put trends, Coach McCaffrey, last game, and I just have these notes, and I will read any game notes that either side has. I normally go 5 pages through. I Google every opposing player, and I just go through at least 5 pages to see if there's any, both in the all and in the news section, just to see if there's anything that's, feature story, something like that. And then I will basically just take as many notes as I can. And then I go in and I actually fill out my Excel spreadsheet, and I have on my like the main chunk for each player. I basically treat it like a game note when I was making them in minor league baseball, where I bold what is like the key point. And then I've got the details so that I know it's kind of where my eyes are going to go. My eyes will go to what's more standing out on my chart. So I have 2 locations on there. One is that bolding in their main portion that has some details beyond that. And then I have a little bar above each player's name, where basically the last thing I do before I print my notes is I look through and I say, okay, if I'm introducing this person in the starting lineup and I've got 20 words, what would I say? What is the 20-word description of Luka Garza? Okay, let's type it in there. And that's what I put, first team All-American, averages, 3rd nationally in points, whatever it was. And it's right there. So that's normally how I do starting lineups. Is I'm just looking at that little yellow bar that I have above each one. So for me, say, college basketball, normally you've got either 2 full days or 3 full days. Normally, say Michigan played Wednesday, Thursday morning, I'm normally updating stats and just kind of getting the framework that it can be almost mindless, right? Like you're finishing the game, it's fresh in your mind, you type all that stuff in. And then Thursday afternoon and evening, it's about scouring online game notes, previous game, stuff like that, and getting those notes down. Friday is normally about, finishing that. Normally game notes are coming out on that Friday, just realistically. And then Friday night, even early, if it's a later game Saturday, I might fill out the chart itself the day of the game because A, it's fresher, and B, at that point, it's just I have all the information. It's just about compiling it in the way that I want. The other thing that I do that has been a huge help. My girlfriend did vet school. She's a veterinarian, and she got me onto this. It's an app called Brainscape, and I have each. I'll pull it up here. I have each team that we play, and basically on one side, of course, I have to log in. I have one side where it's just the number, and then on the backs, it's just flashcards. So obviously, I don't have to worry about that for Michigan. I know who they all are, but I'm just for 15 minutes before I leave for the arena. During a pre-recorded interview during the pregame, I'm just sitting on my phone, and I'm not just leafing through Twitter. I'm okay. Number 1 player, number 2 player, and just getting that instinct into my mind. I do like the TV chart that they have on baseball as well, or on the game notes as well. But for me, that flashcard, it's called Brainscape. It's a free app. And to me, that's been invaluable and learn, especially in like tournament settings where you're not really seeing, when we played Texas Southern in the first round. I mean, I watched 2 Texas Southern games. It was the playing game and then the game against us. It helps immensely just to get that name and number, fluidity quickly.
Well, people love Michigan basketball. They also love Michigan football. And you have a role on the broadcast, of course, serving as producer, getting to be the pre and post host. Have you done any demo games of Michigan or anything like that? How have you been flexing your football muscles since you arrived in Ann Arbor?
No, I haven't done that. I called a good amount of high school when I was in college, and then we had an opportunity a few times through Learfield with some of the schools around Winston-Salem, Wake Forest, Duke, App State, to get some demos there. So had there not been a pandemic, I'm sure that would have been something that would have been manageable last year. Because I moved up here the very end of October. So I was still trying to get my bearings, understand how my role is different on site versus in the studio while still being on air. So the hope is at some point this year to do at least one game, but unfortunately not yet at this point, but fingers crossed we can make that happen.
And Brian, at this point, how much are you listening to other guys around, whether it's the Big Ten or just around the country, NBA? Like, are you every night just listening, kind of like I know me and Roger kind of do that. We go through the TuneIn app, and are you kind of the same way?
Oh, yeah. And honestly, so Learfield plug here, the college football blitz, that's how I do it, man. It is the NFL red zone for college football on the audio side. And man, I mean, there are just so many good broadcasters. For a year I hosted when I first started at Michigan or at Learfield with Oregon. Jerry Allen is as good as it gets at Oregon. He is phenomenal. I hope he does that until he's 120 years old. Craig Way at Texas is phenomenal. Like, you just know it's Texas when you hear his voice. Josh Lewin at UCLA, which was really cool to get to talk with him a little bit during the NCAA tournament. I've always been a fan of him and just how versatile he is. I mean, his description's incredible. And, we all know this. There are so many good broadcasters who aren't in these marquee type jobs. Like I worked with MTSU. Chip Walters is phenomenal. He is great and is such a good guy. Being from a MAC school, Steve Baker at Miami of Ohio is outstanding. I mean, he is a tremendous broadcaster. So, that's how I normally do it. There are certain guys, and I mentioned, some of them off the top of who I will seek out their games. But in the Big Ten too, I mean, gosh, it is humbling and at times overwhelming to think that, like, I'm calling the same game that, Matt LePay at Wisconsin or Steve Jones at Penn State or Paul Keels at Ohio State. Like, we're calling this, and I'm not like for the student station like that there is still some surrealness to that. But it just goes to show you that when you have these types of opportunities, I don't care if you're doing the play-by-play, doing the halftime post game, there's real meaning. There are a lot of people who could do that and would love to do that. So you got to bring it. You've got to be great. I don't care what you're doing. I don't care what the game is. My prep should be the same for tomorrow night, Michigan, Washington, and prime time, as it is the next week for Northern Illinois coming to town. My prep for the Elite Eight game against UCLA should be the same as that Bowling Green game I mentioned back in November. Like, for me, that's what's so vital about all this, because, man, there are so many good broadcasters who are at jobs that would make sense, and there are so many good broadcasters who aren't in those cream of the crop positions that, I mean, they're phenomenal as well. The talent is ridiculous.
What are you listening for now when you go back and you listen to your tape? How much are you listening to the full game of it? I get into a habit of listening to everything right after the game's over, and I think it's better to be a little bit more removed from that game before you listen back to it. But for you, do you have a bullet point of things that you're listening for when you go through your tape?
So for me, I won't listen to every single game all the way through. I try to pick out snippets, either a chunk where I felt, boy, that was really good. Like, I felt like I had a good 8 minutes of game action there. Let me see if I've got the right, if I'm right about myself. Or there's times where I feel like, boy, I'm using the same word a lot. I have some crutches that I don't like. So for me, it's more about pinpointing those areas, not going through everything. Because, if we beat a team by 40 points in the non-conference, I think that's more of, let's put together a good show. I don't know how much I can glean from that, honestly. But in terms of close games down the stretch, for me, something that I feel like I'm constantly trying to improve is in basketball, every word is so valuable because things move so quickly. You have to be accurate and descriptive. And I feel like, for me, one of my main takeaways from last year was I need to be even better at describing where things are on the court. And the challenge is describing that while also giving time and score, talking about why this matters, involving your analyst, and we've got a great one in Terry Mills here, love him to death, all while not talking too quickly. It's a delicate balance to try to get all that in, to be informative, entertaining, descriptive, but also not too aggressive with our tone, tenor, word usage, etc. It's not easy. That's a very challenging thing to do. So for me, it's pinpointing, okay, where are the areas I know I can get better, and where's some areas in the broadcast I know, hey, I thought that was great. Am I right? Or I know that wasn't that great. How do I improve? I think that, and I did that in minor league baseball a good amount. I was not listening to all 3 hours of my games in minor league baseball. But you know what? If you take a half inning out here and there, either very good or very bad at first blush, I think that helps to kind of set the tone. You can't work on everything every game, but I wish I could do that. There's a million things I know I'm doing wrong, but if you focus on one, I think it helps. I think in broadcasting we can take a lot away from that too.
Going back to football for 1 minute, it was cool a couple years ago when Alabama played Michigan in the Citrus Bowl, and I'm sitting in the Alabama booth, and I just look next door in the Michigan booth. There's Jim Brandstetter along with Dan Deerdorf, two Michigan men who have been just such legends of that university. Just what have you picked up from being around those guys? And, Jim has called so many big moments in Michigan history.
Well, Jim and Dan, I mean, Jim doesn't have the traditional play-by-play experience. Dan did, obviously, TV at the highest possible level. What I love about those two and what they've brought is that when you listen to a Michigan football game, you know who they're pulling for, what their background is, and that they are cheering for Michigan. I understand that's not everybody's cup of tea because some people want the unbiased, but it kind of fits more in like the NBA TV style where there's a lot more of like that, homerism, if you will. But it goes beyond that with these two because they both played here, they both won here, they both, Dan Dierdorf's an NFL Hall of Famer. They are so close in terms of a friendship, and they're even closer, it seems, to the university and its football program. And understand and can hear how everything is interlocked and how much Michigan and Michigan football means to that broadcast. And I think our fans resonate to that. That can make up for any sort of, it's the game's not going right, or last year we're not calling it in person, right? We're doing road games in a remote location. But if you have that, ESPN, ABC, Fox, CBS can't bring that. I understand that more people are going to watch on TV than listen on the radio, but you've got your hometown call, and you don't get any more hometown than Jim and Dan with Michigan football. It is the peak of the peak, and I for me more than anything else, that's what's meant the most to me in working with them. And so when I first got up here, I grew up in Ohio. I don't obviously talk about that a ton here. But when I first met Dan in person, at first he made the joke of, I just thought you were a figment of my imagination. I heard you, but never saw you, which was great. And then he's like, he's asked me about my background. I said, yeah, I grew up just outside of Cleveland. And he's like, because he's from Ohio as well. Grew up close to the Hall of Fame where he will live forever. And he said, Michigan's been built on a lot of great people from the state of Ohio. Glad you're on the team, or something along those lines. And that just, because I had a lot of family members who were like, we're happy for you, but Michigan, come on. To hear that from Dan, that meant a lot, and that'll stay with me for a long time.
This will be my final one, but I know you mentioned Assembly Hall before, your favorite road venue in the Big Ten for hoops, and you can throw in football too. What do you got?
So I haven't been at many football venues.
Right.
I did fill in on the sidelines at a whiteout at Penn State, which was that was amazing. Now the stadium itself is ugly as hell, but when that place is rocking, it's amazing. For me, I'll say Mackey Arena, Purdue. That to me, that place is it's just super loud. We have a great vantage point. I've got some family with Purdue ties, so I've always kind of appreciated the tradition of that school. But man, it's just a big loud circle. Like, that's awesome. I was really impressed the one time we went there. I'm excited. Those could be a couple of top 10 matchups when we play them during the regular season this year. So I'll go Purdue, but Assembly Hall is way up there. It was fun calling a game at Breslin Center. That's Michigan State. But yeah, I'll put Mackey up there for right now. But there have been some, and also shout out Battle for Atlantis. It's amazing to just be able to walk your hotel to a college basketball game. That was pretty sweet too.
So an interesting fun fact. So Rogers call games in Atlantis. I filled in Atlantis for Florida.
I don't think I got to meet you, Brian. Alabama and
in
Michigan didn't meet, and I think we were always in and out at the same time. But yeah, it was a good week. Boog was there as well.
So quick story. So this was 2019, and Michigan won it. This was Juwan Howard's first year. And so we won the first game, and that meant we were on the top half of the bracket for the second and the third game. That week is Thanksgiving week, and it's also, of course, the week of Michigan-Ohio State. So we had originally planned to fly back on Saturday, and I was going to have to miss – just logistically, it wasn't going to work. It's not easy to fly from the Bahamas to Detroit. And so we won the game. I called the travel agent for the company. I just said, hey, I'm just curious. Is there a Friday night flight out of the Bahamas, out of Nassau, that could potentially get me back so I could host for the game Saturday in Ann Arbor? She's like, okay, let me look. She's like, you just called me. I was about to leave for the holiday. I'm like, I'm so sorry. She's like, it's fine. She's great. Shout out Cindy Johnson. She's awesome. And she said, actually, I can get you on a Friday night flight, and it would save the company $700. I'm like, okay. So sure enough, we ended up winning the tournament. And because of that, we had the second game of the day. So it was a little bit of a tight fit, but took a cab to the airport, got there. Okay, then the power in the entire airport goes out. I'm like, no. So they're like, we don't know. We were like, okay, we're going to go on the airplane. No, we're not. Stay here, blah, blah, blah. All the normal stuff. So I'm like, all right. I'm probably not going to be able to I'm not going to be able to hit my connector from Miami to Detroit, but I can at least, try to get to Miami and then maybe get there for kickoff and be able to do halftime and postgame. I rebooked my flight to Saturday morning from Miami to Detroit. I kid you not, 2 minutes later, the power comes back on. All right, we're boarding in 5 minutes. I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. So we land in Miami. It's like 23 or 4 minutes until that flight. I'm at like gate A4, and of course the flight's like A812, right? And I'm running through the Miami airport, and I'm like, I finally get there. I'm out of breath. They're on there's like 9 zones now. Like they're on like zone 14, and I'm like, I rebooked. I got to get there. Like, any chance you get me on? And they're like, okay, let's look. As long as your bag is still connected to you, because I checked the bag, we can get you on this flight. We got a couple empty seats. Okay, you're good. We get back. Everything's fine. And then, of course, my bag's not there. It was not connected to me, but I didn't give a rip. I got to go. So I was this weirdo who decided to get back to Michigan in late November quicker than instead of staying an extra night in the Bahamas. But we got there. It was awesome, but flying in the Caribbean can be a challenge, and that power outage certainly was one of those cases.
Yeah, we had power outages that Friday night. Alabama played Southern Miss to close out as Alabama won 7th place out of 8th in that tournament. We had power outages leading up to the game. We had it at halftime. I mean, it was a crazy time. But, at least we didn't have to engineer those games. That was what I was relieved about, at least.
No doubt.
But, Brian, this has been a really fun hour just kind of picking your brain, and we've really enjoyed getting to learn more about you and your journey from minor league baseball to Michigan, and we're excited for all the things that are ahead for you. Just thank you so much for spending some time with us, and we look forward to your next broadcast.
No doubt, guys. Appreciate the work you guys have done on the show. I feel like we know a lot of the same people and have crossed similar paths, but have never actually met in person, so I hope that happens sometime soon.
Thanks, Brian.
All right, thanks to Brian Boesch. Thanks to all of you for watching Broadcaster Hour.